Okay, people, without further ado and delay and foolishness, 911 2021. I'm sorry I couldn't bring a friend on board. Zoom was, or maybe it's all my fault in this little world of my own existence where things happen and I am the creator of, in this some essential way, the positive, my own world. I'm responsible for my own world. And, I wanted to talk about deception and self deception, I thought maybe, but can't help but think about 911 and the unanswered questions in America. And I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. This is a discussion in terms of the depth of a world of weaponry and weaponized minds and weaponized people who believe that with the right amount of even a stronger offense can defeat your enemies. This whole concept is so profoundly wrong. Un it's just like it's not 21st century. It's pathetic. It's a mystery, right? This is what we're all wrapped up in. So on 911, when I look around and read some newspaper articles, I don't see any that question any of the mystery that is still wrapped up in that issue. The essential mystery of what happened and how did it happen. So I'm not an expert on it. And I've got a book here by a debunking author, and I haven't even prepared well enough to do justice to it. But, well, you could just start with that third building that collapsed right there. And apparently in the big 911 commission, the book that's 900 pages, they don't even mention that a 47-story tall building, World Trade Center 7, collapsed. Something jumped. It's all connected. Just a few hours after the two big towers. How could that have happened? Not allowed to question that. Wasn't even in the commission report. I wanted to quote from a Native American man. His name is Sun Bear. And I will quote from, despite the derogatory words that I found on the internet about this person. All right, I'll just finish up. I'll just read this. So although we now sit upon reservations, 55 million acres of what was once our whole land, there is return of the spirit, a new generation and a new way based on an ancient belief. And the white man is coming to see that in some ways, if he is to survive, he must learn from the Indian. He must learn to take better care of the land, reversing all his greedy practices and learning a responsibility towards the earth mother. And he must learn that the earth is truly his mother and that he must share it with the winged creatures, with the four-legged ones and the fish as well, the hawks, the coyotes, the cougars, and not to be killed needlessly. Man must learn that there is beauty and value in a desolate place left just as it is. Let his greed and arrogance disappear, and let him say, the earth is our mother. Then man will come alive again. This was written by a fellow named Sun Bear. And if you go on the internet, you can find out that some have accused him of being, a phony or worse. And I don't. The man is no longer alive. But I'll just take his words as they are, and I feel like it's it's still the challenge. It's just survival. That at what level are we going to appreciate nature? At what level are we going to get connected? When you look about the world of deception and denial, to me, one of the most profoundly basic part is just that we have a civilization that's running on a denial of the fundamentals of nature. That nature is not a subset of science. It's the opposite. Science is sort of the everything that mankind has dug out of the laws of nature. This is what science is so far. Um, I've read recently, speaking of cover-ups or denials, that the that there are 12,000 satellites planned for this. What was it? Operation Starlink to broadcast 5G. That's such a mystery. I mean, I don't remember any debate about that. Apparently, only 2,700. Only so far, only 2,700 have been launched, and it boggles my mind that there was. I don't remember reading any articles about this discussion. And I remember 2 years ago in Fairfax, California, and in San Anselmo, California, there was this conversation of how can we allow these 5G transmitters to be like every other telephone pole? And now that conversation is not happening. And now there's 12,000 satellites in this low orbit. Anyways, humans, it's like, wow, that's just one. I mean, that's one of everything is so like doesn't want to be revealed. Here, let me throw another quote in here from this book here. What did I have? Damn it. Right. And I guess I put the page down wrong. No, here it is. In quotes, but let them go on. Give them rope enough, and they will put an end to their own insignificance. There is too much common sense and independence in America to belong the dupe of any faction, foreign or domestic. These are the words of Thomas Paine. The author goes on. Paine was, however, writing long before television became the most pervasive and powerful thought control on the planet. And you can tell the story there. That this was published in 2012. It seems like the internet, they called it television, the internet, sort of mind control. It's numbing how much people can write a story and not want to stray from any real deep questionings. Coming across Amtrak, coming across the country. I've done a lot of traveling this year. Had a few good conversations. I brought up the concept. It's sort of a spiritual concept. And I don't know about spirituality. Almost if spirituality needs a new word to it. Is there a word for God? Is there another word for spirituality that doesn't stop you immediately from thinking? Doesn't prevent you from going, there's something to this. There's something to this being alive, that we're all connected. Something in this world that my brain that worries about who I am or the future or my failure or my fear. There's something when we connect and get out of our introspective fear state, thinking so abstractly, that something more can be revealed. On the train, I had a couple of talks with some of the Amish guys on the train. If every time you go across the country, almost any time you go anywhere in America, you're going to meet some of the Hutterites or the Amish or the Mennonites who live in America. It's a huge colony. It's the third largest language in America is German, which is basically from these people wearing funny clothes who wander through the country. And I get in some conversations. I've had two conversations. I think it was Robert, an Amish man from Billings, Montana, who wanted to tell me about the powers of oregano oil for healing. That we had a little discussion. But here's what he said, and that goes back to my further video about chaos and God that I had with my niece up in Maine. But quote Robert, perfect love of God casts out fear. Now it's a biblical thing, but we're trying to say, what if fear was like really an abstraction itself, you know? I guess that would get back to rock and roll culture almost, but I'm jumping too fast here for you all. That is a culture that gets in the moment. It's an American culture. Um, Not being afraid, land of the home of the brave and the land of the free. Just we're hurting so much here. Uh, COVID-19. The fact again that they've said that there is no scientific evidence that there's no difference in terms of transmissibility of a vaccinated person or unvaccinated. At least that's their proof is that it's a perhaps. There's no proof. And yet everybody who's unvaccinated is a greater threat to you, the vaccinated person, than another unvaccinated person. If you get the virus from a vaccinated person or an unvaccinated person, that's your own thing. You're going to deal with it. It could happen just as much from an unvaccinated person. Now we're mandating that we have to take this medicine. I know the fear of death is horrible, particularly when you start coming down with something that grabs you by the innards and becomes more than a mind picture. Don't back down. This is Tom Petty, and sometimes it feels like I've just been nothing but a drop of water. Just back down. I can't even stand up. It just plop. I don't want to deal with mobs. That was a quote from a friend. I don't want to deal with mobs either. And this was a friend who shut his restaurant down in Maine in the tourist season because he didn't have enough employees. But overpopulation is another huge element of where the civilization is unable to bring itself to communicate to. We had so much stuff laid out for us that was potentially there in 1965 or 67 or 71 or whatever. And who, me? That would be me, baby boomer. Is there someone to blame? Maybe me, guy. Maybe blame's not the thing. On a quote, read something from Gary Snyder from 1965 in his book entitled Earth Household. Or maybe it wasn't in that book, but around that change. He wrote an essay published as a broadside entitled Four Changes, which proposed ways in which human beings needed to address four issues: population, pollution, consumption, and the fourth way was he called transformation. He meant the cultural transformation necessary to address the other three and described its term in this modest way: a basic cultural outlook and social organization that inhibits power and property seeking while encouraging exploration and challenge in things like music, meditation, math, mountaineering, magic, and all other ways of authentic being in the world. Well, that sounds very 1960s. Um, but there it was. I mean, it seems like number one is overpopulation. I still can remember college days, 1971, 72, with my friends and seeing some of the graphs and the predictions of what the world would look like 50 years from now, from 1970 to 2020. And it was staggering to us. It was all of us were like going, I cannot, no, this, can you imagine us young people in 1971 thinking the world would double its population, and what would that be like? And we're in it, and still nobody wants to say there's an issue here. Deep quality of life destruction, deep, sad, and particularly because it shouldn't be against the law to say something. Think of the poor African nations. What's going on? We can deal with this. Get the condoms out. I don't know. It's I'm going to wrap it up with JFK. I don't know. I think I was going to go on too long. The thing about JFK and 911, it's all connected because he basically had decided he was going to do his utmost, his only one moment to be the leader of, quote, the free world, to try to take it to a peaceful place. And he would not be forgiven for that. And the apparatus was already set up, and it's still set up to this very day, set up in Washington, D.C., of an unknown, uncontrolled, non-transparent men with weapons who are doing things that nobody knows. That's the black budget in the military, the black budget, national security. What are they doing? Who are they? What was going? I mean, even with Wuhan, and what does gain of function mean? Is there some truth to that? Were they really working in a lab on taking a virus and making it worse? Would human beings do that? Would America finance people in China to do this? What was that organization? It's amazing. The cover-ups are so huge. Here's, all right, I'll just read this. Page 21 of the Unspeakable book. He, that's JFK, he secretly taped the White House meetings during the crisis. The tapes were declassified, transcribed, and published in the late 1990s. The transcripts reveal how isolated the president was in choosing to blockade further Soviet missile shipments rather than bomb and invade Cuba. It was a blockade, 1962. All right, go back to the thing, guy. Don't interrupt yourself. Nowhere does he stand more alone against the pressures for a sudden massive airstrike than his October 19th, 1962 meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In this encounter, the chiefs' disdain for their young commander-in-chief is embodied by Air Force Chief of Staff General Curtis LeMay, who challenges the president. This is the transcript. LeMay, and he's referring to the blockade instead of what he called an intervention. He says, this blockade is almost as bad as the appeasement at Munich. Parentheses, he's referring, of course, to Munich, 1938, when Chamberlain of England, to avoid war, allowed Czechoslovakia to be ceded to Hitler. It's tragic, horrible. But so LeMay goes right at JFK in the meeting, big fat. I'm just thinking he's big fat. Man, General LeMay, this is almost as bad as the appeasement at Munich. I just don't see any other solution except direct military intervention right now. He's looking at JFK right in the face. He's saying this is recorded. A historian who has studied the missile crisis tapes for over 20 years, Sheldon Stern, has noted a pause in the conversation at this point, during which the Joint Chiefs, quote, must have held their collective breath, waiting for a reaction from the president. The general had gone well beyond merely giving advice or even disagreeing with his commander in chief. He had taken their generation's ultimate metaphor for short sightedness and cowardice, the 1938 appeasement of Hitler at Munich, and flung it in the president's face. President Kennedy, Stern says, in a remarkable display of a word, I'm not sure if it's French or German, you might say sang Freud, I guess it's sang froid, something like that, refused to take the bait. He said absolutely nothing. President Kennedy said nothing. Ending the awkward silence, Navy, Army, and Marine Corps chiefs of staff argued for prompt military action of bombing and invading Cuba. General LeMay breaks in, reminding Kennedy of his strong statements about responding to weapons in Cuba. He almost taunts the president. LeMay, I think that a blockade and political talk would be considered by a lot of friends and neutrals as being a pretty weak response to this. And I'm sure a lot of our own citizens would feel that way too. In other words, you're in a pretty bad fix at the present time. Kennedy says, what'd you say? LeMay, I say you're in a pretty bad fix. Kennedy laughing. You're in with me personally. The discussion continues. Kennedy rejects the arguments for a quick, massive attack. This is what was going on in 1962, young people of today. I don't know what the count of nuclear warheads that the USA and Russia had at that time, the Soviet Union had. Nowhere near as there are today. We can thank President Obama for initiating a phase that will have weapons modernized for the next 3/4 of a century. Anyways, JFK tried to stop all this madness. Kennedy rejects the arguments for a quick, massive attacks and thanks his military commanders. Kennedy, quote, I appreciate your views. As I said, I'm sure we all understand how rather unsatisfactory our alternatives are. He left the room. October 24th, a report came in that a Soviet submarine was about to be intercepted by US helicopters with depth charges, unless by some miracle the two Soviet ships it was accompanying turned back from the US quarantine line. The president feared he had lost all control of the situation and nuclear war was imminent. Robert looked at his brother. His hand went up to his face and covered his mouth. He opened and closed his fist. His face seemed drawn, his eyes pained, almost gray. We stared at each other across the table. For a few fleeting seconds, it was almost though no one else was there and he was no longer the president. Then the miracle, the end of quote from RFK. The miracle occurred though. The enemy, Nikita Khrushchev, ordered the Soviet ships to stop dead in the water rather than challenge the US quarantine. At that moment, he saved John Kennedy and everyone else. Khrushchev did. Without knowing it, without many of us knowing it, without any of us knowing it at the time, only a handful of people maybe who've read this book know it now. Nikita Khrushchev had a secret correspondence with JFK. The correspondence began in private in 1961. This was after the first meeting, which had gone terribly for JFK. And he was looked upon as weak. And maybe he was. To the generals, for sure he was. Absolutely he was. Khrushchev had sent his first private letter to Kennedy on September 29th, 1961, during the Berlin crisis. Wrapped in a newspaper, it was brought to Kennedy's press secretary at a New York hotel room by a Soviet magazine editor. Turned out to be was a KGB agent whom Khrushchev trusted to maintain silence. Anyways, the story is incredible. Hey, Bob, is that you? Well, I got a friend coming in here. How you doing, Bob? Anyways, what I just saying was the story is incredible, and the story is about how close we were to actual nuclear exchange that could have killed millions of people back in 1962. And I can remember having nightmares. I can actually physically remember the fear that for almost 2 weeks in the USA we went through. I was about 12 years old. Bob, your mic there. Got to unmute. Ask to unmute.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Good. Glad to see you. Or
Yeah.
almost see you. I see a picture of you. I don't see you, actually.
Just a second.
All right. You don't have too much more time. Is that you? Holy
What's
cow.
that?
Looks like you're sinking in the water. You're flopping in the breeze. What are you doing?
Just sitting.
Yeah, we got the waves behind you. You got the camera. You got the camera on your stomach, looking up at it.
Yes. I'm on my bed.
Well, I don't know what that's a really interesting look. I'm not sure what to make of it. It's actually very funny, Bob.
So I'll do another one. Is that better?
That was funny too. That was a good move. All right, so you're kind of interrupting a thing, and that's fine. I was going to go back to. I was just talking to people about 1962. Bob, do you remember how old were you in 1962 when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened? Do you have childhood memories of that?
I was about uh, 14.
Yeah, we were about the same age. I was in sixth grade. Oh no, wait a minute. That was when Kennedy was assassinated. I would have been in fifth grade. Yeah, I was in fifth
I
grade.
was in match. I was in high school.
Do you remember the fear as a kid in those couple of weeks of time?
Of course, everybody was thinking about we're going to die.
Yeah, I don't think we've really quite had that experience since then. Do, do you think that's a fair assessment? I don't think. Of course, the younger generation may not know anything about that. That we were really on the brink of using these weapons. It's just amazing.
Well, it's a long time. It was 50 years, and we're not going to have the bomb. It's not going to happen.
All right. So take that further. What is not going to happen? What do you say? 50 years and it's not going to happen? What?
We're not going to have the bomb, EO bomb.
What?
It's not going.
Well, we don't. We're just gonna. You think we're gonna be able to get rid of them, or we're just gonna live with it and feel like that we'll just never use them ever?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll just listen. I'll listen.
All right. All right. Well, I was. All right. You are relaxing. Well, that's good. It looks very surf oriented. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to try to wrap it up on a positive note, Bob. Since you're taking it easy, resting at the beach, it looks like.
No, actually, I'm in my apartment.
I somehow I'm not surprised, but it looks very, very tranquil there. I feel like you're at one with the ocean. Yeah. Well,